Hello, and welcome to another edition of North Penn Answers. I'm Joe Sullivan, a member of the North Penn School Board. On this program, we'll answer questions posed by our residents and dispel rumors spread through the local media. Joining me is Vincent Sherpinsky, President of the North Penn School Board. Welcome.
Welcome.
Budget is the key item on everybody's mind as we begin the process in December. Can you give us a quick timeline on what the process will be?
Sure. In October, the budget timeline was distributed to the district's administrators, and in November, departments began their preliminary budget reviews after they've received their per pupil budget. Departments hold several budget meetings throughout most of November. In December, on the 1st of December, all schools are to return their per pupil budgets to the business office. The preliminary budget must be displayed by December 23rd, which is 110 days prior to the preliminary election or 20 days prior to the preliminary budget adoption, or the board must adopt a resolution stating that we will not raise taxes above the Act 1 index. At the action meeting on January 19th, the board will adopt a preliminary budget for the 2012-2013 school year. Then, over the next few months, the budget will be discussed at various public meetings, including committee meetings and full board work sessions. On May 7th, the district will advertise and display the proposed final budget. This is done at least 20 days before final adoption. At the action meeting on May 17th, the board will adopt the proposed final budget for the next school year. June 1st is the deadline to post the final budget, and on June 11th, we will give notice of the intent to adopt the final budget, which must occur 10 days before the actual final adoption. Then on June 21st, at our regularly scheduled board action meeting, the final budget for the 2012-2013 school year will be adopted.
Now, at the last Finance Committee meeting, the PA Act 1 index was discussed, and a resulting article indicated that the board was raising taxes 1.7%. Is that the plan?
Act 1 was certainly discussed. However, what was discussed was the fact that the board cannot exceed the 1.7% limit without approved exceptions or a voter referendum. No decisions have been made concerning what and if there will be any tax increase for the 2012-2013 school year. Those decisions will be made throughout our budget process.
I understand. Now we dedicated a whole program to the Act 1 index, but could you give us a brief refresher?
Sure. Act 1 is the law that allocates a portion of revenues from casino gambling in Pennsylvania to offset reliance on local property taxes to pay for public school education. Act 1 was designed to be revenue neutral. That means that any gambling revenue received by the local school district can only be used to offset existing property tax revenues, not as an addition to the district's budget. From the school district perspective, the most important feature of Act 1 is that it establishes a ceiling on board-approved property tax increases. Any proposed increase in property taxes above the percentage based on the state-mandated formula must be approved by the district voters in a back-end referendum. A back-end referendum is one in which the outcome of the vote applies retroactively to the issue being voted upon.
What was the process for budgeting before the Act 1?
Prior to the passage of Act 1, school boards typically approved preliminary budgets in May and final budgets were adopted by June 30th. Under Act 1, however, Pennsylvania school districts must either approve their preliminary budgets in December or early January, or else adopt a resolution stating that the following year's budget will not require a tax increase greater than the allowable index limit determined by the state. The law also allows for something called exceptions. Exceptions were put into place for extraordinary expenses like existing labor contracts, responses to emergencies or disasters declared by the governor, implementation of a court order or administrative order from a federal or state agency, and responses to conditions that pose an immediate threat of serious harm or injury, retirement contributions, or special education costs beyond Act 1 limits. If one or more referendum exceptions are approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, a school district may increase the rate of the tax levied for the support of public schools by more than its index without seeking voter approval.
So there's two checks and balances in this process. If the school district, a school district in Pennsylvania would like to apply for exceptions and they would have to get it approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Education before they could go above the index.
Correct.
And then the second check and balance is that if it goes above the index and the exceptions, it has to go to a referendum vote to the public.
Correct.
And that's sort of why the timeline is structured the way it is. So the preliminary budget has to be approved in enough time to have a referendum placed on the ballot in case it is going to be over the...
One of the facets of Act 1 is it accelerated the timeline for budgeting. Normally, as I said before, our budgets used to come forward through the later part of the first half of the year. Now, under Act 1, our preliminary budget must be brought forward and advertised in the December and January timeframe.
Gotcha. Thank you. How is the Act 1 index determined?
The Act 1 ceiling is based on the average of the state average weekly wage and the federal cost index for elementary and secondary schools. For the fiscal year 2012-2013, the base index is 1.7%. On the screen is the history of the Act 1 index from 2006 to 2012 for the North Penn School District.
So what is the true Act 1 impact? What does it mean for North Penn, and how does it change the way we budget and fund our programs in the school district?
One of the impacts of the enactment of Act 1 was the introduction of competition for tax dollars. Competition comes from the fact that Act 1 imposes limits, and these limits mean there are only so much money available for education. We've all heard the old saying, the pie is only so big. So what this boils down to is if we want to spend more money on something new, it has to come out of current resources, which basically means taking money away from somewhere else. This also means that every increase in non-educational expenses takes more and more dollars away from education. That is why the school board takes a hard line against any increased spending that doesn't impact the quality of education.
Applications have been coming in for the Alternative Revenue Committee, or the Alternate Revenue Committee, however you want to look at it. How soon will this committee begin its work, and how will it be part of the budget process?
The Alternate Revenue Committee was a concept that we had been looking at for the last 7 to 8 months, and we've decided to try to implement that for the coming school year. The Alternative Revenue Committee will seek alternate revenue that can offset what we do and also cover existing expenses. We've gone to different school districts, reaching out to them to see what they're doing in this area, and we found some interesting ways that we can save money, raise revenues without impacting our taxpayers. And we formed this committee to explore some of those ideas, to get an opportunity to ask questions of our community, whether they support some of these ideas, and we're going to move forward with that at our November 17th action meeting.
Thank you, Vince. I read in the paper that North Penn was part of the Advanced Placement Honor Roll. Do you have any comments for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Over the last 3 to 4 years, we've made a concerted effort to be a big part of the advanced placement increases in this area. North Penn won the award along with 2 other local school districts that we've done a phenomenal job of expanding our AP testing, our AP placement results, and also our overall performance in advanced placement classes. That has taken years. That has been a major undertaking by the administration at the high school and the kids who've done those tests and taken those tests. And it's a great opportunity to acknowledge the hard work that the staff has put in there. AP to us is a benchmark of high performance in schools, and North Penn won the award, and that's nice to see.
Yeah, I just thought we'd bring that up since we understand and we're very proud of that, and we don't want our budget process and the tough times to affect our advanced placement on our student programs, our student achievement. And I know you're concerned about that as well. That's what we put above everything else. So while we're talking about the budget, we're in the preliminary stages. How is the budget outlook for next year shaping up?
As it stands now, even with 1.7%, the real estate challenges and the additional cost of our existing contracts and labor agreements will eat up the 1.7% without any increases in anything else. What that means is that going forward, our budget is going to be extremely challenging. And we haven't seen anything from the governor's office yet. His budget won't come out until probably early January, late January. And that will impact us again. As you know, last year, the budget expectations came from the governor's office, and they cut even more money than they had anticipated. Those impacts to us created havoc in a lot of areas. Fortunately for us, we were able to work with our local representatives to have some of that funding restored. They were able to restore some of that funding partially, and we were able to maintain our existing programs and levels of performance. As it stands now, though, it is not looking good. The preliminary information we're getting out of the governor's office and from our local state representatives says that we should be prepared to take some large cuts again, and that's where we are right now.
I think one other point that's worth noting is it seems like at any given time we're dealing with 3 budget years, because we're really the district's still closing out last year's budget. We're a good ways into the 11-12 year budget, and now we're having to plan ahead and look for the 12-13 year budget, and it's just a constant daily massage of how we have to generate a budget and effectively use the taxpayers' funds. So it's a continuous effort. It takes a lot of people to do. And I just wanted to say I appreciate all the staff and administration and everything that they go in, the work that they put into developing this budget.
Well, what you made is a very valid point. One of the difficulties that a lot of people don't see with an Act 1 budget is we're planning 18 to 19 months into the future, on top of this year's budget, which hasn't even been executed. So we're not even sure if we're accurate to the penny now going forward till June, yet we're planning 18 more months beyond that.
Right.
That makes it very difficult. We're planning a budget where the governor hasn't told us what we're going to get from the state, which is a big chunk of our funding. Right. We also haven't seen anything from the federal level yet.
Right.
So we're asked under the Act 1 budget timeline to present these budgets not even knowing what they're going to give us. And that right. causes some difficulties. And we've been living under Act 1 now since 2006. It makes it difficult. We've been very good at this. But you're right, it's a constant process. We're strategically planning every month, all the time. And we're just closing out last year, and we're looking forward to seeing how that's come out, because we know that should be a positive for us. Mm-hmm. We know that we were able to have some savings along the way. We've done some things during the last current school year that we're going to produce some savings, and we see that translating into some help for us going into the future. So you're right, though. It is a constant work in progress.
That's it for this edition of North Penn Answers. If you have a question you'd like to see answered on this show, please email northpennanswers@npenn.org. We encourage everyone to send us your questions. Thanks for watching, and have a pleasant day.